Stardate 1001.2020. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of funny, kind of smart podcast about new Star Trek and beyond. I'm your reluctant captain, Mike Garcia. With me on the view screen, we have
Mariah Gossett
and Grant Davis.
This week, we're covering the penultimate episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. The penultimate episode of season 1, I should say. Show is not canceled. We're covering episode 9. We're covering episode 9, Crisis Point. And I'm so glad I'm here this week because even though my allergies are killing me and I just ate my weight in Sudafed, so please bear with me. But I'm glad. I'm glad I'm here because, well, last week I wasn't here because I was feeling sick because Austin is the allergy capital of hell.
It is.
But I'm glad I'm here because I am dying to talk about this episode with you guys and with everybody in the live chat because this was a good one. But before we get into it, Mariah, can you tell our listeners / viewers how they can support the pod?
Yes. So the first way you can support this little show of ours is to make sure you are subscribed on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. If it's on YouTube, hit that little bell notification button so you know when we are going live. You can find all of the links to that at StarTrekPod.co.
My phone just buzzed because it's notifying me that we're live right now. Another way to help support us is go to patreon.com/StarTrekPod. This is a place where you can make a per episode pledge. That means you give us $2 an episode and you only get charged if we put up an episode that week. And in exchange, you get bonus exclusive content. You get access to our exclusive Slack channel where you can chat with other people in all sorts of different threads that we have going on about everything Trek. You can also join us on our little exclusive episodes that we'll do where we talk about like the Kelvin movies, and that comes in handy quite a bit with an episode like this, as we're going to get to in just a bit. Once again, that is patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Yes, indeed. And if this episode of Lower Decks made you want to watch the Star Trek movies all over again.
You have a cat toy?
Sudafed's kicking in.
Hi, guys. If this episode of Lower Decks made you want to watch those movies all over again, then you must join us at patreon.com/StarTrekPod because we've covered most of the Trek movies, most of the TOS movies. We did most of the Kelvin movies. Of course, there's only 3. But yeah, join us on Patreon. We had a blast doing all that, and we're still going to do more movies. So check that out. Patreon.com/StarTrekPod. Also, if you are watching us live tonight, join us on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook. Please participate in the live chat. And if you have a comment or a question, as always, you want us to address later during the pod, just type the word pod, capital P, capital O, capital D, in all caps before your comment so we can see it. Okay, let's liberate some lizard people, turn up our lens flares, and dive into this episode of Lower Decks, episode 9, Crisis Point, a.k.a. Crisis Point, The Rise of Vindicta, a.k.a. Star Trek, Lower Decks, the movie.
Woo! Worth it.
Episode 9 was written by Ben Rogers and directed by Bob Suarez. This is the one where Mariner is told by her mother, the captain, to go get some therapy.
You know how I already feel about this.
This is what Mariah's been advocating for since the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait until we introduce our segment.
Even though Mariner balks at the idea of therapy and decides to make a Star Trek movie in the holodeck instead, she actually does give herself some great therapy by the end of this episode. I really want to get into this, guys. So let's talk about some hot freaks.
Hot freaks.
All right. If you're new to Star Trek Pod, you know some other podcasts do hot takes. We do hot freaks. Who wants to go first? Mariah, let's hear from you.
Yay! I literally felt like they wrote this episode for me. Like the cold open is about how she needs to go to therapy. She makes a joke about how it's the 80s. Technically it is. It's the 2380s. And we get to, I mean, the therapist is voiced by Paul F. Tompkins, who is also the co-host of the Pod Directive podcast with Tawny Newsome. So there was just like some extra fun, I think, voice chemistry going on there between the two of them. I thought all of the food references were really silly and stupid in the therapist office. And then this episode, every time I say it, it's always jam-packed with the references. And I think they managed to hit every original series film, as well as all of the 2000, like post 2009 Star Trek films, and then a small peppering of everything else in between. So they really hit the nail on the head. I think my favorite scene is the way too long, it's so funny, it's so long view of the ship from every possible angle. I thought that was genius visual gag. I loved it so much. And then, yeah, it finally gave me what I wanted, which was some deeper exploration of Mariner's character, which I think we finally got here. I just thought it was a great episode all the way around.
Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that the entire conceit was brilliant. Getting to make their own mini Star Trek movie that not only parodies all of it, but also does a loving homage to it, and how it fuses its mockumentary style with just like, we are engrossed, we are a part of Trek, and we are happy to pay tribute to all the greatness and all the hokiness throughout time. They just layer it all in, and they do it in a way that continues to develop these characters, and it really gives us some insight into Mariner, and I feel like at the end of this we got some actual definitive character growth. Whether or not this like continues on going like into the next season, I don't know, but it feels like there is no turning back with some of the things that happened here, which is very exciting, because I think this will start propelling our characters and our story into the future, and show that Lower Decks doesn't have to be constrained anymore. So I'm extremely excited about what this episode did.
Me too. I have to agree with both of you. This was probably my favorite episode of Lower Decks so far. It's one of my favorite episodes of New Trek as a whole, of all the new Star Trek shows we've gotten. Because if this was a lesser show, the whole episode would have just been the spoof, right? Because the jokes, the references were really funny. And even if you're not a Trekkie, they're still funny. But if you are a Trekker or Trekkie, I was laughing more than I've ever laughed during this show. It was so hilarious. They get everything right. But like Grant said, they do it with a wink and a nod and a hug, right? Because it's paying homage, because obviously Mike McMahon and the writers love Star Trek and they live for this, right? And it's there. It's all there on the screen. You can feel the love. You can feel the warm embrace, and you can feel the kind of Mariner vibe where she's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna mess with this a little bit," and that's what they're doing on this show. Have you guys seen that movie Paranorman?
Bits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually really, really great, and we're watching it as to kick off our Oktoberfest Halloween movie marathon.
Nice.
And Paranorman's a great one because it's a CGI feature, but it's made to look like a stop motion feature, and it's crafted with so much care and love and attention. And we're watching it earlier today. I'm like, I haven't seen an animated film that is crafted with this much care and love and attention, not only for the story and the characters, but also the look and feel and the jokes. You can tell someone put a lot of love into this, and that's what I get from Lower Decks. This is not a cash-in show. This is not a Star Trek's hot right now. Oh my God, Star Trek's so hot right now. And let's just make a cartoon since we're in quarantine, and we'll get the eyeballs in CBS All Access. No, this is crafted with love and intention, and that was so clear in this episode, because not only was, like I said, not only was this just a wall to wall grab bag of Star Trek parody and spoofs, which it was that, but it was much deeper than that. This is probably the deepest episode we've gotten. I mean, it was mainly a Mariner story, as they most of these episodes are, which I love. She is one of my favorite new Trek characters, maybe one of my favorite Trek characters of all time. But there was something for everybody to do in this episode, and there were things revealed about each character in this episode in a really deep way. Of course, Mariner the most, and we'll get into that. And then even Boimler, I started kind of feeling for Boimler in this episode. And then the stuff we've been bringing up about Tendi, how is she in Orion? In Starfleet? Is Orion part of the Federation now? Aren't they a bunch of slaves and slave traders and smugglers? Isn't this what's that? And then that was addressed in a great way. And then
Rutherford.
Oh my God. The truest of like lawful good ever created is Rutherford.
Exactly. Yes. We even though in this episode, the show reminded us how much of a lovable, positive person Rutherford is, which we already knew. It even took that a little deeper, and also brought us to one of the almost most I don't know, like, it was just great. Just him and his relationship with the engineer, the lead engineer on the show.
Paul Shear's character,
yeah, Paul Shear's character. I mean, I'm not sure if their relationship at the end was intended to be homoerotic, but that's what I read.
I feel like they're giving us like that, the fact that we usually don't get to see queer characters on TV, and this is all we would get in like old Trek. And so
there you go.
I feel like it's that nod of being like, we can't say it, but we're saying it. Like,
right.
I thought that was when the cat doctor was like, yeah, you guys go get it.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to put a button on it, this episode was the funniest episode of Lower Decks I've seen. And it also made a lot of room for some great, deep character development.
Oh yeah, we also got the reveal that Rutherford's first name is Samanthan.
Samanthan. So good.
Samantha with an N at the end. Samanthan.
This is probably the first episode that I want to watch like multiple times, and not just to count the references, but I want to go back to that turning point Mariner had when she started fighting herself. I want to dive into Mariner, guys, in this episode. What do you think was revealed about her from your perspective in this episode that we haven't really gotten before?
I feel like she finally understood that she actually believes in herself, right? Like, I think for a long time, she has been this like sort of fuck up, pushing the boundaries, break the rules, because she, was sort of maybe that stick in the mud straight A student at the academy. And when she broke out, she was just like burnt out of it, probably burnt out of the rules, and burnt out of having to appeal to her parents, who are such high-ranking folks in Starfleet. And so I think she finally had the epiphany that she can be good in her own way. And it's going to be somewhere in the middle of her breaking the rules and following the rules, because she does have a love for her mom as a captain and can see that love is there. And I think it was just her feeling frustrated in how her mom is showing her affection and her love.
Yeah, absolutely. Like her being able to confront herself and use the holodeck as therapy session instead of the food metaphor. Oh man, Paul F. Tompkins is so good, and that it had such an immediate BoJack Horseman vibe. I mean, he's also Mr. Peanut Butter on BoJack Horseman, but just how all of his line delivery and how it's layered with food metaphor nonstop felt so BoJack Horseman to me. Even before realizing who it was voicing, and I was just like, oh, this is perfect for the idea of of therapy. And I think that's really heavily explored in BoJack, by the way. But it was clear that that kind of format and environment was not going to be helpful to Mariner, and her just kind of devising as a joke this this holodeck as a film system that might be therapeutic, and it ultimately working out to her benefit to kind of peel back these layers of what her defenses are, why she's lashing out, and when she doesn't even get to necessarily confront her mom, because the more important person she needs to confront is herself and her conflicted feelings about this. She gets to kind of come to this epiphany of like, you know what, I do have enough self-reflection to kind of recognize that my relationship with my mom is complicated. I can see where she has pushed my boundaries of where I was comfortable, but at the same time, she's always looking out for me. And I do feel safe and at home. And these are all things that like we've commented on throughout our review of this show, and kind of recognized from an outsider perspective. And the show's done such a great job of kind of taking us along and giving us a window into her character, into this personality. Like I was like, was this show written because they listened to us?
Right?
At times I'm like, they must listen to the stuff Mariah's always saying. It's nailing it.
That's the thing, because I think throughout our coverage of this show, we've all talked about this, but I think, Grant, you've been the most vocal critic about wanting this show to be less episodic and more serial or serialized. And I think, yeah, the show is hearing you, or or something's going on, because this episode would not have worked so emotionally and paid off so much for the character arcs if this had been episode 2 or episode 3. We really had to live with these guys for a while to invest in them, and really to get to this place where Mariner is literally facing herself and getting down to the idea that she really does love being in Starfleet. And
it was heavy. It was
it was very heavy.
Yeah.
It was it felt toxic at times and just absolutely heartbreaking. And you know, you're laughing one second, and that the other time, the next second, you're just like, oh man, I feel for her. I feel what she's feeling at times. I can relate to some of this, and it's just, oh wow, this cartoon is really doing a great job of walking that tightrope of emotions, I think.
Yeah, when she broke down and was fighting herself and said, it was something like, you think you're a badass, but if you really just stepped up and did a good job every day and realized that you enjoy doing a good job and you like it here, then you'd really be a badass. That was such a crystal clear moment of self-reflection that you don't really often see on the other Star Trek shows, to be honest. Yeah, it was so great and so deep, and done within this entire like hilarious
in 22 minutes.
In 22 minutes, within this entire like this parody episode that takes place on the holodeck. I mean, what a brilliant thing. Instead of like, you know, this episode could have just been her and Paula Tompkins, the cat doctor, and that would have been pretty funny, and her dealing with that and figuring that out. But Mike McMahon and his crew decided to really exploit the idea that this is animation, put it in the holodeck, make it look amazing, make it even more entertaining, and make fun of and embrace all those great movie tropes that we all know and love. One of my favorite movie tropes that this episode brought up was when Rutherford does something special where he like comes up with a new way to beam everybody to safety.
It's like, it's a movie. You can beam whatever you want.
It's the movie. You could do whatever. And that's so true. It's only in the movies where they have these special new technologies that you've never seen on the shows.
But his line delivery, where he's so excited, he's like overwhelmed and kind of just like stuttering it out. Yeah. It has that like realism to it that I think I always get from like Rick and Morty, where they're so excited that they're just like word vomiting it out and just kind of tripping over themselves. It's like, but the whole thing, like it's a movie, you know. So like as a movie, you can just do that shit. I was like, that's so good.
Yeah,
my favorite part.
I also I love the idea that Mariner is the architect of her own therapy as well as the architect of her own demise in like so many ways in this episode, because she is over at the computer, you know, and Boimler's like, are you writing a whole movie right now? And she's like, no, just the main like plot points, some set pieces, you know, and the computer is going to fill it all in. And I was like, man, I know, I mean, so many writers process their own like emotional baggage through their writing and in script writing. And it's like, you know, how many comedians do we see their first season of whatever show they've written is partially or mostly based on their own real life? And so it's like Mariner has created this whole film for herself, but it's so interesting to me that she's cast herself as the villain, because she does see her mom and her being on these polar opposite sides. And I just love that she finally realizes at the end that she is only literally fighting herself and she's not fighting her mom. Like she's just fighting her own internal battles. And I thought that was such a beautiful way for them to tie that all at the end. And then I really appreciated how they used Tendy's character to sort of address like the many tropes that sometimes people get cast in, you know, in Hollywood and in film and television. You know, yes, we have these preconceived notions of what an Orion is, and we haven't seen a lot of them in Star Trek. You know, in the newer movies, we saw that Uhura's roommate was an Orion, but we never really get much of an explanation for her character. We just get to see her in her underwear. So it's like, again,
2009, baby.
2009. So yeah, so I really appreciated that. And like Tendi to me was speaking for the audience when she's like covered in Shaq's fake holographic blood. And Mariner is like, ooh, you should wear his earring. And she's just like, his ear is still attached to it. And also, it's not okay for me and Orion to wear religious garb of another culture. Like, no, not even in a pretend movie. And I was like, man, Tendi gets it. Like
that's right where the that was the where the wave started falling back for Mariner, when she got a little too into the carnage and tore that off his ear and was like, look, and then she was really having fun murdering all of her crewmates, like a little too much fun.
Yeah,
and part of me was
cathartic.
part of me was like, man, I could put myself in these shoes. It would be totally cathartic to murder not you guys. That would be great.
Retro. But yeah, and then, you know, stylistically, you know, I said it in my hot freak about the scene that was like the ship porn, like essentially that went on for gratuitous. And I just like, as it was going, I was like, oh, please tell me there's more. Oh, and there's more, and there's more. Like
once it does the overhead that just keeps spinning.
Oh man, that was almost. I'm not kidding. Mariah, I don't know when the last time you saw the motion picture was. Grant, you've never seen Star Trek 1, the motion picture, but there is literally a scene that clocks in at like 8 minutes.
Yeah, of the
where Scotty and Kirk fly in a shuttle just like they did in this episode and look at the Enterprise and bask in its glory, and we see all these circular porn shots of it. And Scotty is almost like the engineer in Lower Decks, where he's like getting really verklempt about it. It's so great. It's so great.
I was also thinking it was hilarious that they spent so much of their episode on the title credit sequence with the names flying at them. Like they made it amusing, and they used it as a moment for them to kind of talk about what the whole thing was going to be, you know, the plot. So giving that exposition kind of dialogue, but at the same time, it just kept going in all these names. I was like, yes, that's how it feels whenever I watch one of those movies with you guys. I'm like, it just takes forever, this title sequence.
I'm not sure if the music cue during that title sequence was the music from Wrath of Khan, but it sounded just like it. I really think it was. And I think
orchestra music was beautiful.
It was great.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was a Wrath of Khan music or a recreation of it. In addition to the music, which we got a more movie music cues going on throughout the episode and at the end. Did you guys notice? I mean, obviously we noticed the lens flares on the bridge and how
Yes.
how the lighting was darker and different, like
We
it is in
got,
the
like
movies.
the Abram filter, and then we got the like original motion picture filter with the
Yeah.
scratchies and like the
Yes,
film
the
bubble in the
letterboxing.
corner, the
Yeah.
letterboxing. Yeah.
The aspect ratios kept changing and mimicking the movies, and the grainy lines and all that stuff was just beautiful. I mean, just people who are in love not only with Star Trek but with animation and with film and television truly crafted this just to make us happy. Thank you. That's all I got to say right now.
The animators really outdid themselves on this. This has to be one of their most expensive episodes of the season because of all of the extra, like, because those ship scenes
rotating shots
looked so good. Like all of the
Seamless.
back paintings were great. All of the backgrounds were great. All the extra, like, you know, they had to dissolve every single character that she shot. You know, there's so many extra pieces. And then on top of that, the aspect ratio changing all the time. And like, when is that going to change? When are we going to go from it being like a fuzzy, non-remastered version? Because there's that point when I think it's like right after they throw the Borg head and they're standing there, it sort of gets a little out of focus. And then it comes back like when you're watching an unremastered movie.
Yeah.
This episode, I mean, it's been a long time coming throughout all these episodes, but I felt like this was the episode that clearly brought Lower Decks into the fold of like, you've fully earned your place within the echelons of all that is Trek. And I am not the person to actually be saying that now that I realize, like, I came into this fresh to Trek with Discovery, but I do start feeling a little bit now that I'm more familiar with the world of Trek, that maybe that protective gatekeeper shit that I shouldn't feel. But I was kind of thinking like, oh, I don't know, is this fully what I want it to be? And they've been so careful and considerate and loving each step of the way. And I felt like with this episode here, how it masterfully glorified all these Trek tropes, and how it integrated it all with pathos and character development and really making everything just feel so cohesive and loved and cared for in this world. This is it. Like, this show's easily better than Picard to me. It belongs more in the world of Trek than Picard ever did.
Co-signed. Yeah. I think after this episode, I was really bummed that we only have one more episode of Lower Decks left for this season. But if they wanted to go out on a high note, I think they're doing it right. You know, I didn't think that we would get to the point where we're getting emotional payoffs from episode 1 all the way down to episode 9 in terms of this is subtly serialized, you know, and it is, and it just made everything so much deeper, especially that ending when Boimler finds out Mariner's secret.
Yes, Boimler has such a ridiculous. I kind of love that Boimler became like sort of this impromptu reoccurring joke throughout this episode, because I know his character other people have found him annoying. I don't find him that annoying, but I thought it was like the appropriate response from someone who's in like a holodeck sequence that they don't want to be in. Like, hey, like I planned my time. It's like the person who reserves time at like the tennis court, or like, do you know what I mean? When you encounter those people at the park and then they don't want to share. And like Boimler's like, okay, well, I'm going to share, but I'm still going to get what I want and need out of this. And so he's just like, I'm going to continue to ask the captain questions. And that scene where he's holding Ransom when Ransom is about to tell him what the captain is allergic to and giving him advice on the cookies was so funny. I was like, it reminded me, I felt like the reference was to Wrath of Khan, when Kirk finds out his son has died, and he's like, ah!
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that was the other thing that we had been asking throughout our watching of this show is, does everyone else know that Mariner is her kid or not? Because they're already always a little bit vague about it. And you could always kind of leave it up to, that's just not something they've ever properly addressed, but people are aware and they just kind of ignore the problem that's going on, the friction between them. But here was the confirmation, underlined and exaggerated, fully pointed out and articulated to us, the audience, that no one else on the ship except Freeman and Mariner are aware of their relationship. And I was like, oh. And the fact that Boimler now knows, and I don't know if you guys saw a little bit of the trailer for next week, but
he's not good at it.
It's certainly got to be a problem.
He can't keep a secret. There was another layer to that reveal that I thought was a little dark and maybe a little more interesting. So Boimler is the one who initially coded all of these characters on the holodeck. He hacked into everybody's personal log, so it would be like 100% like a direct copy of everybody on the ship. So the show's trying to tell us what these people say as holodeck characters. It's how they would think and talk as real people. So if we're going to take that at face value, when Boimler realizes that Mariner is the captain's daughter, the captain, the holodeck version of the captain, says that there would be huge, horrible ramifications for anyone on the ship who finds out that Mariner is her daughter. She would lie, cheat, and steal to get them transferred off the ship or kicked out of Starfleet.
Right.
That was weird. Is it that why do you think she would go to those extremes to keep that secret?
Nepotism?
Is that
potential conflict of interest there, potentially? Or maybe there's something even deeper going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's the possibility of it being deeper. It's also because it is the holodeck, it is just probably combing through, it's like, when do you write in your diary? When things are really intense and you have a lot of emotions about stuff. And so it's possible that the captain's personal logs that is such a deep secret for her, that it would respond, like the holodeck would make it respond in that particular way. But I also think it might just be that she's afraid that people would either look down upon her because of that, now that they see how she's treated Mariner, and sort of let Mariner get away with things. And it, right now it comes off as being like, oh, you're such a flexible, understanding captain. And then as soon as that changes, it becomes, oh, so you are treating her differently because of who she is.
Right. Like it was something that was easy enough to kind of laugh off at the beginning of the episode. Boimler just like grabbing private files because he wants to impress the captain. But now what a violation of people's trust and dark secrets it turns out to be, to the point where like, that's actually a pretty scummy move you just did there, Boimler. Like for pretty much no gain except for to avoid chocolate chip cookies, right? And you gotta say a handsome girl about the ship. I think those are the two notes you got. But
handsome lady,
handsome ship. I was gonna just say, I think Boimler is feeling the ultimate repercussions, because now he is saddled with this big secret that he obviously did not want to know, and ruined his interview with the captain because he now knows this secret. So I feel like he got a bit of a instant karma moment for his sleuthing into personal logs. And then we'll see what the bigger ones are next episode.
Right. As long as he's the one to bear the burden. But, going back to what you were saying, Mike, about like, why would Captain Freeman, like react so aggressively? It makes me wonder if, like you're saying, there is another whole level to this that we haven't considered. And if we take into consideration what we know about Mariner, and that she was an extremely studious hard worker who had previous experience on a fast track to being a captain and everything was working out great, what if in part there was a much bigger mental breakdown that we're not even it's not being addressed. It's not even made as like a joke or reference. We know that obviously something happened and she's been relegated to being an ensign, but what if it was a little bit more psychologically severe to the point where there's something that snapped in her, she's a little bit broken, she now almost in like a paranoid schizophrenic way views her mother as like an enemy and competitor, but her mom is so protective of her that if anyone finds out and jeopardizes her daughter's well-being while she's trying to keep her safe on the ship, that's why she'll go after them.
Yeah, that is I'm going to count that as a theory, and I think it's a good theory because if it is true, this episode really laid the groundwork quite well for that, because we got into some of the darkest depths of Mariner's psyche in this episode. And if we do get a reference next episode about some real dark mental break that she had, I'm going to instantly think about the dark shit she did in this episode and be like, okay, I buy it. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the possibility. So like with mental health things like that, it's a possibility that you take things that happen to other people and you apply them and it somehow gets ingrained into your own sort of reality that's been constructed in your brain. So it's like, even if she didn't do any of the violent acts, but seeing a violent act has then implanted itself into her memory in a specific way that she believes somehow she's responsible for it. It's like an interesting angle to that, perhaps. That might be
manifesting as
you know, that might be a little, unless they've got like a psychiatrist on staff, that might be like a little too in depth for
Paul F. Tompkins now.
I mean, you never know. It's like half the time I'm like, are they really going to go there? This is an animated satire comedy show, and then they go there in so many levels. So who knows? Like they could really get in depth about some of this stuff.
The fact
Guys, they're gonna peel back the layers of the onion. Food joke.
The fact that they have Paul F. Tompkins not as some like throwaway red shirt who can die the next episode, but as the annoying bird therapist who does the food references, means that we should likely get him as a recurring character, and I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the Star Trek family. He's co-hosting the official Star Trek podcast.
I wanted to also talk to you guys about the opening scene that was obviously a reference to Saru, where you have the lizard people being eaten by the rat people, and it was basically Kelpians, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it could definitely be read that way. I know that's
the latest version of that. Yeah, of that trope in Star Trek for sure. The Kelpians.
Was like the where's the other one? Anyway, I have a whole list of all of the references that were made, and so
bring it. There are definitely other storylines where there was a predator race and submissive race on the planet where we had to intervene. Yeah.
So in TNG, The Lonely Among Us, there's the Antikins, which were self-described carnivores, which apparently look like dogs. In that episode, the Antikins were rivals with a reptilian-like species called the Soleil. These particular lizard people don't look like the Soleil, but it's possible that it could be a reference to it. Also, there's just like the animated series, like a lot of these series will introduce just like different versions of this plot line. Like
that, I think that episode of TNG you just referenced, the alien costumes in that are like 1980s Doctor Who.
Yes.
Awful good. You would love it, Grant.
Awesome. I probably wouldn't. if it's Doctor Who,
you would instantly turn off the TV.
Like,
yeah.
No.
I like that Mariner. I think Mariner's Vindicta character really reminded me of a lot of these kind of overbearing, crazy,
over the top
thespians.
Is she quoting Tempest?
Yeah, Shakespeare quoting villains that we get in Star Trek movies. I'm thinking of General Chang from Star Trek 6, and we also got another Star Trek 6 reference at the end when the cast of the holodeck signed their name at the end credits. That's so good.
As well as when they drop into the entire plot with them all jet skiing, just like Kirk mountain climbing or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, they're on vacation, just like in Star Trek V, for sure.
Yeah, I also really liked oh man, now I'm gonna forget. But like, when her cape gets stuck in the like weird elevator thing that they sort of like beam over in, and it's just like I feel like they also had some fun with some general pop culture references, because there's definitely like some things that felt like references to Alien, the like "get off my ship, you bitch," when she's just like "get off my mom, you bitch." Like
Right.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple droppings of the word bitch, and they said something
there was
about
"witch" was the first one, because I put on the closed captions. So
Oh, they beeped out the F word like twice. Yeah.
Mhm.
What did they call Ransom's they said dick something or other.
Oh, yeah.
In this episode, and I was like,
Dick
"Whoa."
swab? Was it Dick swab?
I don't know. It was something weird like that. I was like, huh,
Yeah.
what is that one doing there? Okay.
It's a weird one.
I saw a comment on here I wanted to ask you guys about.
Yeah.
PW Gregory says, if it turns out that Mariner is in witness protection, WITSEC, because she knows that Starfleet has been infiltrated by the body ingesting bug creatures from Conspiracy, I will flip my lid. I don't know what this means. I don't know what Conspiracy is.
Conspiracy was an early TNG episode in which high-ranking Starfleet officials were basically taken over by parasites and mind warped to do evil things and take over the Federation. But Picard, being Picard, figured it all out and lasered the Queen like you do, and got rid of the whole thing. And for 30 years, however old that episode is, almost every Star Trek fan has brought up Conspiracy and been like, remember in that one movie when the Admiral was a dick? I bet he had one of those fucking alien bugs in him from Conspiracy, bro. Not to belittle PW Gregory, but yeah.
Lay off the weed, PW.
Yeah.
I was also going to bring up Da Vinci, who is a big old character in Voyager from my favorite Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I love that at the end he shoots Mariner's like evil version that's coming out of the Genesis planet.
Yeah. Mariah, did you ever think you'd be watching a really deep moving Star Trek show that ends with a scene with Voyager's Da Vinci inserted into a scene that is parodying the end of Star Trek II when we see Spock's casket? Yes or no?
No, I've never imagined that before in my life.
Me neither.
I was going to bring this up. So I really appreciate the writer on Den of Geeks who goes into all of the references of these episodes. Like, thank you, people who get these early screeners can figure all this stuff out for me. But apparently, did you hear about Star Trek Renaissance?
Is that just like when they go back in time through the holodeck and they look like...
There apparently was a script for a film that was developed before First Contact called Star Trek Renaissance. Yeah. It was going to be the second TNG movie. It was unfilmed, but Data was supposed to travel back in time and become Da Vinci's apprentice.
Yeah, and I believe this is when Patrick Stewart read this. He said, no. We're not doing this. We're going to do a good movie. If we're going through comments right now in the live chat, Choopy cleared something very important up for us. She said, Pod, Mariner called Ransom the captain's dickwig.
Oh, perfect insult.
Dickwig.
It's a male merkin.
Oh, I do know what a merkin is. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Dickwig. Wow.
Yeah.
A little male merkin action.
Good stuff. Should we put a call out for listeners? Okay,
listeners, drop your live watchers, viewers, drop your comments, capital POD in the chat. We'll bring them up. Choopy, another one from Choopy. Is it just me, or has this series so far just topped each other at a steady rate? I've rarely seen a season with such momentum. This is the best season 1 of Star Trek.
It's a great
even better than Discovery season 1. I'm a big fan of Discovery season 2. I loved it, and I love the end of Discovery season 1, the second half. But this thing has, if you would have asked me last week, how to rate this season of Lower Decks. I said it's been really inventive, funny, and consistent. But now I agree with Choopy after this episode. It just actually keeps getting better at a steady rate.
Yeah. Here's one from Chris Rogers who says, Pod, this episode kind of touches on that Mariner is the badass Maverick because she's also a competent officer, and the two are not mutually exclusive, which I think I would say maybe the ultimate badass Maverick of Trek, because yeah, she can fight, she can go wild card, but if she needs to, she can use diplomacy and, save the lizard people from the evil
The rat.
rat people and like save a planet.
Sure.
The rat people thing, when she's just like, will you stop eating them if I give you food replicators? And he says, does it make nutritional pellets? Like referencing
Yes.
like, pet rat food. I was like, oh.
Yes. That was so great. That was that opening scene was just a joke after joke, and it was really good. But I really like that the captain didn't just leave it. She was like, okay, what can we do to stop you eating these people? That was very much in line with the Starfleet captain. I like that. JC asks, what did Mike think of last week's episode with the flashbacks? Before episode 9, episode 8 was my favorite. I really liked the clip show of clips that we never really got. The fake clip show, kind of like what Community did back in the day. I thought that was really great. One of my favorite aspects of it was Rutherford kept rebooting and showing up in different places or different points in the plot. Yeah, it was really inventive. I liked it a lot.
Choopy says, Pod, I saw Pod's complain about Mariner last week, us complaining that, or other people maybe, I never get to clean the conference room line. But this week we see in her heart she loves the warp core. She does think the conference room is cool. And she's the person who really wants to love Trek, but thinks it's too lame to actually embrace out loud.
She's a cool Trekker.
Who's that person?
We'll get you in some Trek shirts and face masks here soon.
I'm getting there.
Grant, aren't you glad we tricked you into watching all those Trek movies?
It really, I didn't think it was going to pay off, and it really did with this episode. I was like, oh, I got that reference. I got that one.
Paid off for a straight 22 minutes.
And again, CBS, you can send us a check because we obviously pre-did all of those movies so that we could have this glowing review about this episode. Anyway,
Yes.
I'm gonna
Cut
keep
the
asking.
check.
Never know. They might be listening.
Cut the check, CBS. There's a comment here from Chris Rogers talking about Boimler. Did Boimler hack into personal logs, or are they just available? Because I feel like it's always been this thing that people just assume they're private. That's never been clear, because I think we've had this issue before in older Trek where someone just reads somebody's personal log or can just call it up. Seems a little invasive.
I don't know. Maybe they're just like low security systems, like your teenage diary lock, where you hide the key in the same box as your diary. And it doesn't work very well to keep your siblings out of it.
We got a comment here from Wizwig who says, I love episodic television. I'm hoping Strange New Worlds is episodic because it's been a long time since we've had non-serialized Trek.
It's been a long time. Sorry.
Oh no, God. Following up on that, serialized TV is overrated because they end every episode on a cliffhanger, which for me is lazy and manipulative. I disagree. I love it.
I think
Tell it to Lindelof.
I think, though, we've seen the increase in the cliffhanger because of the way television is released now in full seasons, right? Like Netflix and all of these platforms want you to binge through an entire season of show so that you are left wanting more, which they're then going to cancel after season 2 because they figured out that they make the most money off of the first 2 seasons. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they
Netflix.
suck. They're the enemy.
So they're the enemy. But I mean, I do enjoy episodic television. I will say, like, at night, like, I revisit a lot of episodic shows, things like Frasier and Cheers, where there is like subtle character development, but you could just jump into any particular episode and enjoy it. Same thing with like, it's kind of fun to skip around in places like Voyager and the original series. And it's like, of course, you can get something extra out of the plot if you watch it all in order. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Strange New World.
And that's what Lower Decks is, right? It's not like hyper serialized, but
right.
Yeah, it's character. The characters grow.
Yeah, and I think
like Frasier Crane, as you mentioned.
Right. I think too, there was like, I think you could, if you watched like the first episode first, and then you could probably watch any of these in any particular order, it seems like, until these last 2 episodes, which is fun because I probably would have done a little rearranging on some of them. Specifically, I know we got some feedback, I think also from WYSIWYG, about the fact that we had like the evil alien who turned out to not be evil, and then another like something seems evil but then is not evil at the end, like back to back. And so it would have been nice to maybe put a buffer episode in there.
From Carolyn, the classic Star Trek Shakespeare reference was awesome. Into Winger Jr. being crushed after his shout out in the credits, into the cape, and then chef's kiss.
Yes, it was good.
Chef's kiss. Kern says the original series still has the best season 1 for me of any Trek series, but Discovery and Lower Decks rank up there. I don't think I've seen TOS season 1 all the way through since college, which was 2 years ago. So, Mariah, I know you probably watched all these in order. TOS. What is your favorite season 1 of a Star Trek show? This is something that Trekkers talk about a lot, because typically a Star Trek show doesn't really find its footing until like season 2 or 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, as much as I love Voyager, season 1 is not my favorite season of Voyager.
No.
And I mean, the first season of the original series is really, really good. I don't remember the last time I've watched it in order. I often just like pick an episode. It's something that I like to, no shade to it, I like to fall asleep watching the original series because it's just like, it lulls you into a nice sense of security.
It's boring. You're saying it's boring.
No, it's not boring. Yeah, I don't know. I think this has been a really great first season. I also, I still really like the first season of Discovery as well. And we finally have started Deep Space Nine from the beginning in this household. So I will let you know about that one.
Oh, and definitely a Deep Space Nine reference in this episode, which was great. The Bajoran, what's his name? The big burly
Shax.
Bajoran. Huh?
Shax.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
When he's trying to fight back with Mariner, he mentions the PAL race in hell, and that's totally a DS9 reference, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Guys, I mean, I know I'm talking to a bunch of Star Trek fans, but if you haven't listened to the Pod Directive, the official Star Trek podcast that just came out with Tawny Newsome and Paul F. Tompkins, the latest episode that just dropped this week, which was who is the actor who plays Rafi?
Michelle something or other.
Yes. She is on the episode along with Tawny Newsome, along with 2 other Star Trek fans / writers of color, women.
One is the editor-in-chief of StarTrek.com.
StarTrek.com, yeah. All geeking, 4 really funny, smart, sharp Black women who love Star Trek, all geeking out about Star Trek for about an hour. And it's amazing. And they all say DS9 is the best Star Trek, which just hits me in the heart. So yeah, good stuff.
Chippy says, Pod, the opening scene also really brought up deeper things like peace won through oppression. Is that considered better? And bringing freedom is harder. It's too much work. Which, Chris Rogers also follows up on and says, the opening is also kind of playing on the criticism of Starfleet as just space colonialism, bringing freedom.
Many societies seem to like to bring democracy to folks who maybe might have a better system / as we've seen this year. Is democracy great? Who knows?
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Oh, Takako says Michelle Hurd is the actor who plays
Yeah.
Rafi. Thank you.
I just pulled up the episode. So it's Michelle Hurd, and Angelica Bastian and Kendra James.
Yeah. Kendra's great, man. If you guys aren't reading the stuff on StarTrek.com,
she's doing a bang up job over there.
Holy shit. Not only is that, I mean, the great thing about StarTrek.com under Kendra's watch is that she is posting and editing essays that allow the writer to really critique the franchise in a deep way, which is great. I mean, name me another, major brand that posts content on its own website, critiquing, like really critiquing its own creations. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Really good.
Great job. I wanted to ask if y'all picked up on the kind of a Zahn reference that Mariner says that in her movie Boimler would be more of kind of a Zion and that he might not make the final cut.
I didn't know what that was. I thought maybe it was a Steve Zahn reference. Like, was he ever in one of the movies?
This again is such a deep cut, and I wanted to bring it up because one of the things I've so appreciated about this show is it reminds you that the people who are making it are super fans who have such a deep love, because this is maybe the deepest cut I have ever seen. So David Gattros was supposed to be a Vulcan named Zion from an unmade 70s series called Star Trek Phase 2. And he was supposed to be sort of like this replacement for Spock, because at the time they didn't know if Leonard Nimoy would return. And so the actor who was supposed to play this guy eventually does appear in the Star Trek The Motion Picture, but as a human. But I'm just like, dang, y'all are super nerds. I appreciate it.
A ping did go off in a tiny dark part of my brain when I heard that name, but I couldn't track it. So yeah,
it's deep. I feel like I have to watch this show at least twice, once with the captions on, and I'm just like writing down things that I have to like Google later. I'm just like, ooh, what's this person? What's this name? I don't recognize that. Ooh, this is from this. Like, it's fun. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a Reddit page with every single reference listed. It's quite long.
They're going for it.
It's quite
really
long.
Going for it.
Yeah, they're really going for it. Good stuff. Okay, guys. I know I said this is my favorite episode of Lower Decks so far. Mariah, I think you said that as well?
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite thus far.
Grant, you want to round it out?
Pilot.
Awful. I hated it. I hate everything. I only like Picard.
Of course.
That's the only show.
Only Picard in that one episode of Voyager with the Lower Decks crew on Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, them and all of Enterprise. Mainly the theme song.
The theme
Enterprise is a good show. The theme song.
I don't know. Is it? It seems.
She's gone. She's gone.
We had to kick her out for that.
Kicked me out.
Sorry. There are a few episodes of Enterprise that have a line or two that I really enjoy. For sure. For sure. Hey, if we're giving out props to other podcasts, PW Gregory says everybody should listen to the Delta Flyers if they're Voyager fans. And yeah, I watch Voyager. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm enjoying the Delta Flyers podcast with the two homies from Voyager talking about the old episodes. Their last episode was great because they had the guy Ethan Phillips, the guy who plays Neelix on. Yeah. And he was so charming and so funny, and it was a great episode.
Speaking of podcasts, Mariah, you guested on a podcast this week, didn't you?
Yeah,
I did. I think it's dropping tomorrow. You can hear my episode on A Strange New Pod, where we deep dive into possible theories of what the burn is based on a Voyager episode. So we theorize about the next season of Discovery. We talk about Voyager. What's not to love? Oh no, my backdrop just fell down.
Was that your cat who did that?
And she's gone. We just have to kick her again.
You mean you're not flying around in space? What's happening?
No,
it's funny how your backdrop really matches the entire video backdrop that we have.
Yeah.
So good.
I thought that was on purpose just for me.
Oh no.
Okay.
The
power of tape.
There we go.
Hung up just in time for the wrap up.
Hooray.
Hey, if there are other Star Trek podcasters out there, invite us on your shows. Mariah did a great job on a strange new pod this week, even though her background keeps fucking falling down.
I'm just saying, my spouse came in here and messed with it before the start of the show. I think this is sabotage.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. But yeah, if you have a Star Trek podcast, hey, invite Grant on it.
I'm over it.
Oh God, can you imagine me having to like pretend to talk Trek with other people? Be like, yeah, Bajorans or whatever. I don't know.
We are busy people, but we will make time for Trek. Speaking of busy people, I forgot to bring up that Clyde is not with us today. You probably noticed. Clyde, is he around? No, he's not around. No. He had a last minute away mission. So live long and prosper, Clyde. He will be back, of course.
We're recreating him on Genesis.
Yeah. He'll be
he
back.
didn't die, as far as I know.
No. I didn't pull a Mariner and shoot him with a phaser. We're good. Okay, guys. Anything else to say about this episode before we wrap it up?
Nah, I'm just excited for the final episode.
Yeah. And then Discovery.
Whoop, whoop.
We are living in the month in which Discovery season 3 will premiere. It's October, baby.
Woo!
Oh, spooky.
So excited. All right. Thank you so much for joining the pod this week. Remember, you can find us live on YouTube every Thursday talking Trek. Of course, we'll be covering the next episode of Lower Decks, and we'll be covering Discovery season 3 when the series returns very, very, very soon.
Yes. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you have subscribed. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Give us those 5 stars. We would appreciate it. Let us know what you like about the show. And you can find links to all of that at StarTrekPod.co.
And we've already mentioned it before, but you can help support this show if you're loving what you're hearing, especially if you're excited for the return of Star Trek Discovery by going to patreon.com/StarTrekPod. There you can make a per episode pledge. We always recommend you do the $2 amount per episode, which comes out to about $8 a month. And in exchange, you get access to our exclusive Slack channel and all of the reviews we did of the Kelvinverse movies, which apparently comes quite in handy when you're wanting to watch anything with a bunch of deep cut references like Lower Decks. So patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Do it.
Yes. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek Pod. And shout out to Karen, who helps run our Twitter, and James, who helps run our Insta and do a fucking awesome job. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again. Mariah, where can we find you online?
When I'm not in the space void of a guest room, you can find me at Mariah Gossett on all social platforms. That's Mariah with a Y and a Gossett with 2 S's and 2 T's. And for our non-video watchers, my background is just slowly dying to reveal a very, very messy bed.
You've opened a portal into a hostel. Grant Davis, where can we find you?
At Baron Von Grant, right here, as Wolverine's claws stabbing into it. You guys can't see that if you're not watching the video. You guys should join us on the video.
Yeah. Find us on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Mike M. Garcia. Come back next week.